You know that strange feeling you get at night, that creeping sensation that something is watching you. You might brush it off, tell yourself it's just your mind playing tricks. But what if it isn't? What if the last shadow in your room doesn't belong to you? This story isn't about ghosts in some distant haunted mansion. This one happened right next door. Quiet suburbia, white picket fences, smiling neighbors. And yet, behind one of those smiles, something far darker lurked. You might want to keep your lights on for this one. And whatever you do, don't turn around. We lived in a peaceful neighborhood tucked into a forested cul-de-sac just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. A place where kids played in the streets and neighbors waved from porches. My wife and I had just moved into our new home, a two-story colonial with creaky floorboards and a fireplace that never quite worked right. But we loved it. It felt like a new chapter, a quiet one, at least it was supposed to be. Next door was a small, ivy-covered bungalow with fading green shutters and an always-empty rocking chair on the porch. The house looked abandoned, but the lights were always on. That's how we first noticed him, Mr. Winters. He was off. Tall, thin, probably in his late 60s, pale skin that looked almost translucent and eyes like polished marbles, always dressed in the same threadbare gray cardigan, even in July. When we first introduced ourselves, he didn't shake my hand. He just smiled too long, like he was trying to remember how. "Welcome," he said. "You've got a lovely house. You'll find the shadows behave if you leave them alone." We laughed it off, thinking maybe he was just eccentric, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. The first odd thing happened 3 nights after we moved in. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a tapping noise, slow, deliberate, like fingernails on glass. I looked out of the bedroom window, but the street was empty. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. But this time it was coming from inside, from the mirror. I know how that sounds. Ridiculous, right? But the sound was distinct, like something from inside the glass. I turned on the light and stared at the mirror, heart hammering. Nothing. Just my reflection. Tired, pale, confused. But there was something else. A shadow. Not mine. It stood behind me, tall, thin, unmoving. I spun around. The room was empty. The air was cold. I turned back to the mirror. The shadow was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I saw Mr. Winters watering his dead grass. No hose, no sprinkler, just walking back and forth, pretending. I told him what I'd seen, hoping for maybe a rational explanation. He didn't seem surprised. "They always start with the mirrors," he said softly. "They like to be noticed." I asked who they were. He just smiled again and whispered, "They were here long before us. We're just borrowing the light." That was the last real conversation I had with him. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. My wife, Rachel, started sleepwalking, something she'd never done before. I'd wake to find her standing in the hallway, staring into corners, whispering things I couldn't understand. Sometimes she'd have scratches on her arms the next morning. Once I found her in the guest room closet, curled up like a child, whispering, "It's not my shadow. It's not mine." We called doctors, therapists. No one had answers. And then there were the shadows. Not just in mirrors, everywhere. In the corners of rooms, under tables, behind doors. They moved, not in a dramatic Hollywood way, just enough to make you question if you saw it. You'd glance again and they'd be still. But the unease never left. I started recording the house at night. Set up cameras in every room. Most nights, nothing. But one night, I saw it. Rachel was standing at the foot of our bed, still as stone, at 3:13 a.m. Behind her, in the hallway, was a tall, twitching shadow. It jerked like broken marionette strings. It didn't move fluidly. It twitched closer and closer until it stood inches behind her. Then it vanished. She didn't remember any of it. I decided I had to talk to Mr. Winters again, but when I went to his house, it was different. The curtains were gone, the porch light flickered erratically, and that empty rocking chair, it was swaying. No wind, no footsteps, just swaying. I knocked. No answer. The door creaked open on its own. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. It smelled like damp earth and something metallic. The house was cluttered with old books, melted candles, and mirrors, dozens of them, stacked, leaning, hanging on every wall. But every single one was covered with black cloth. All except one. At the end of the hallway, facing directly into the living room. It was tall and ornate. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just a trick of the light. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow stretching just a little too far across the wall. But shadows don't breathe. They don't shift when you're perfectly still. And they certainly don't linger in the corner of your room, watching you long after the sun has set. I should have listened to my instincts. I should have run the moment I realized. The last shadow in my room wasn't mine. It started with the house next door. The old Victorian had been empty for years, its peeling paint and shattered windows giving it the look of a rotten skull half buried in the earth. No one ever moved in. No one even looked at it. Until he arrived. Mr. Velas was his name. At least, that's what he told me the first time we spoke. Tall, gaunt, with eyes so sunken they looked like pits dug into his skull. He smiled too much. Not the warm kind of smile, but the kind that made you feel like you were being measured for something. "You'll have to forgive the noise," he said, his voice like dry leaves scraping against pavement. "I like to work late." I didn't ask what kind of work. I should have. Because that same night, the noises started. Scratching. Not from the walls, not from the attic, but from inside my room. Soft, rhythmic, like fingers dragging along wood. I told myself it was the house settling. Then I saw the shadow. It stood in the corner, tall and impossibly thin, its edges wavering like smoke. My own shadow was cast by the lamp beside me, frozen in place. But this one moved on its own. I didn't sleep that night. 3 days passed. The scratching grew louder. The shadow grew bolder. Then I found the note slipped under my door. Rules for the watched. 1. Never look directly at it. 2. Never acknowledge it out loud. 3. Never turn around when you feel its breath on your neck. Why blood turned to ice? Because at the bottom of the page, written in jagged letters, was a fourth rule, one that hadn't been there when I first read it. 4. Too late. It's already in the house. I confronted Mr. Velas. He wasn't home, or at least he didn't answer the door. But through the cracked window I saw them, rows and rows of jars, each filled with something dark and swirling. Shadows, trapped, and in the center of the room, a chair, facing the wall. That's when I understood. Mr. Velas wasn't just my neighbor. He was a collector, and I was his newest specimen. I moved out the next day, left everything behind. But some things follow. Last night, as I lay in my new bed, I felt it, the cold press of air against my neck, the slow, deliberate sound of something breathing just behind me. And in the dim light of the moon, I saw it, the shadow, standing in the corner, watching, waiting. I thought I was safe. The new apartment was smaller, brighter, no dark corners for something to hide. But the first night, just as I drifted off, I heard it. A whisper, not from the hallway, not from outside, from inside the walls. It was my name, drawn out, guttural, like the voice was tasting the syllables. I froze, my fingers digging into the sheets. The air grew thick, stale, as if something had sucked all the oxygen from the room. And then, a knock. Not on the door, on the headboard of my bed. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't move, didn't breathe, because I knew if I turned to look, I'd see it, leaning over me, smiling. The next morning, I found the message scrawled on my bathroom mirror, the glass fogged with condensation. You can't run from what's already inside. I stopped sleeping, stopped looking in mirrors. But mirrors aren't the only things that reflect. I caught it first in my phone screen. Just a flicker, a shape standing behind me where nothing should be. Then in the blackened window of a parked car, in the sheen of a knife as I cooked dinner. Always there, always watching. And then one night, it spoke, not in my ear. From my own mouth, I felt my lips twist into a grin I didn't make. My tongue, heavy and foreign, formed words I didn't think. You should have turned around when you had the chance. I know what it wants now. It doesn't want to hurt me. It wants to wear me. To step into my skin and live my life while I'm left screaming in the dark behind my own eyes. I've boarded up the windows, covered every mirror, but I can still feel it, closer every night. And now, as I write this, I see it in the blank screen of my laptop. A face. Not mine. Never mine. It's smiling, and this time, it's not alone. Look behind you. Just kidding. Don't. Comment, I won't turn around if you've made it this far. And sleep tight, if you can. They say your home is your sanctuary, safe from the outside world. But what if the real danger doesn't come from some dark forest or abandoned asylum, but from next door? What if the person you wave to every morning knows exactly what your bedroom looks like in the dark? This is not just another haunted house tale or a ghostly urban legend. This story comes from a quiet suburban street where every house had freshly painted shutters, neatly trimmed lawns, and secrets buried so deep the soil reeked of them. What started as a curious glance into a neighbor's window ended in something far more sinister. A presence that didn't belong, a shadow that moved on its own, and a warning that came too late. I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, your classic middle-class slice of Americana. My parents had lived in that same 2-story house since the late 80s. I moved back in with them after college to save money while job hunting. At 23, I didn't expect to be in my childhood bedroom again, but it felt oddly comforting at first. Safe. Familiar. That illusion didn't last long. The strange thing about our street was the house next door. 1421, a single story with overgrown ivy on one side and curtains always drawn shut. I never remembered seeing the owners. My parents said an older man lived there, Mr. Holloway. Widowed. Kept to himself. Didn't like visitors. On my second night back, I saw a figure in his window. I was brushing my teeth when I glanced out and noticed the curtain slightly parted. A pale face stared back. Hollow cheeks, eyes too wide, skin almost translucent under the yellow light. But the part that unnerved me most was that it didn't flinch when I noticed it. Just held eye contact, unblinking. I closed the blinds immediately, my heart thudding. Maybe Mr. Holloway was just a lonely old man. Maybe he didn't realize how creepy it looked. But then the tapping started. It was subtle at first, 3 slow taps on my window at 2:11 a.m. I checked, saw nothing, went back to sleep. The next night it came again, 2:11 a.m. on the dot. Tap, tap, tap. On the third night I stayed up, determined to catch whatever prankster was messing with me. I kept the room dark, cracked the blinds open just enough to see the backyard, and waited. The digital clock on my desk glowed red. 2:10, 2:11. Tap, tap, tap. But there was no one outside. My eyes scanned the backyard. Empty. No footprints in the dew-covered grass. just the silence of suburban night. And then I noticed something inside my room, a second shadow. It stood behind me, long and narrow, stretched across the floor even though no one was there to cast it. I froze. The shape moved when I didn't, shifted when I breathed. I couldn't bring myself to turn around. I didn't dare. Instead, I squeezed my eyes shut and flipped on the desk lamp with a trembling hand. The moment the light came on, the shadow disappeared. My room looked normal again. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, a hallucination, stress from moving back home. But something inside me knew better. That wasn't the last time I saw the shadow. The next morning, I finally asked my parents about Mr. Holloway. My dad frowned like I'd mentioned a dead relative. "Mr. Holloway passed away last year," he said. "Heart attack." "Why?" I blinked. "You're sure?" "I thought I saw him in the window the other night." Mom gave me a strange look. "The house is empty, sweetie. The city's been trying to reach his next of kin for months. No one ever comes around." That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m., the tapping returned. This time, it came from the inside. 3 deliberate knocks. From inside my closet door. My throat went dry. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched the doorknob, waiting for it to turn. It didn't. The knocking stopped. Silence followed. But something else changed. The air felt heavier. I could see my breath like the room had dropped 30 degrees. The same shadow appeared again, stretched across the carpet, pointing toward the closet. This time it pulsed like it was breathing. And then, a whisper. "You saw me. Now you're mine." The voice wasn't loud. It was right behind my ear, but it didn't feel like sound. It felt like cold intent. The next day, I packed to leave. I told my parents I needed to stay with a friend in the city for a few days. They were confused, but didn't argue. I think they could see the fear in my eyes. I didn't even know what I was running from, just that every instinct screamed to get out. But the story doesn't end there. On my last night before leaving, I had one final encounter. It was around midnight. I was double-checking my suitcase when I noticed something unusual. My bedroom door was slightly ajar. I always kept it closed, especially after everything. But now it was open by a few inches, and there was a sound. Not tapping, not knocking,